Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of RainerAvenueRadio.world. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hey, what's up, guys? How's everyone doing on this beautiful February 16th, 2026? It's been cool. Today, I wanted us to talk about the silent struggle, why men aren't talking about their mental health. So, we just had the Valentine's Day pass. Some individuals out here, not quite having their Valentine. It's interesting, when we have that type of time of year, because it allows us the space to just kind of check in with our loved ones, as well as those people that love us back. And sometimes you got brothers out here, they don't have Valentines, and that's cool too. And so they have a lot of silent struggles that they're going through, right? And so I wanted to talk about this. The biggest issue in men's health today is silence. It can either be cultural, it can be emotional. There's some social barriers that keep men from speaking from their heart, or seeking help, or even acknowledging their struggles. In this segment, we're going to break that silence. And so first thing I want us to think about is, as we're here on the Men's Mental Health Show, I'm glad you're here. Today, we're going to dive a little bit into those urgent situations or issues that are affecting men everywhere with the silence. Men are struggling, but too often we don't talk about it. We don't ask for help. We don't admit when we're overwhelmed sometimes. And sometimes the silence can cast a shadow in our lives, and that silence is costing our lives behind the scenes and relationships and our own sense of self. So today we're going to break that silence together. So why do you think, I'm just curious to see, for those people that are paying attention, why do you think a lot of brothers are silent, right? Or just men in general? I want you guys to kind of chime in and let me know, what are some things that you feel makes it a little bit of a challenge for you to be more vocal? Well, one thing I know for me personally, it could be cultural expectations. I know growing up, this expectation to be strong, don't cry, thug it out, handle it, man up, keep your chin up, that type of thing. Fear of judgment, brothers don't want to be judged, men don't want to be judged. We don't want to appear weak. And, it's really interesting too, because I feel like if we're around other men, it's a little bit more easy to be honest, right? And it just depends on the relationship you have with your dad or father figure that you look up to. I know for me, I remember when my stepdad was alive, we would say, I love you all the time, right? But sometimes, you see movies and you see shows where, uncomfortable silence, are you considered or labeled, this particular part of your personality or this particular sexual orientation because you said you love that person or whatever. And so there's a lot of inner demons that we're battling, right? And sometimes it can be the lack of emotional vocabulary, right? If you grow up and you haven't really experienced the positive male influence to just say, hey, I love you, I see you, I appreciate you, positive influences, right? I've noticed that many men were never taught how to express their feelings. A lot of times, we do sports, we do a lot of things, to express ourselves. But it's like when you sit down and you have a real conversation, that's not something that we feel comfortable with. I can speak for myself, I'm getting better with that. And so social isolation as well. So fear close relationships as men age. I know for me personally, the challenge I have, and I like to keep it 100, is sometimes, when you're around, for me personally, I feel like there's a stigma with certain cultures, right? And if I'm around certain people with the opposite sex, it's like the stigma that people have, of African Americans, right? And so sometimes being around certain people, people will ask questions based on ignorance. And it was really interesting because I know when I was in college, a lot of friends from different cultures, and we had a relationship where they can ask pretty much anything. We would have those deep dives about certain situations. But then when you get older, you have these relationships where they're like business relationships or roommate relationships or things of that nature. Sometimes there's a lot of things that like go unheard of, right? That people express it, they feel it, but it's more under the surface, right? And so that can cause an issue. There's work pressure, identity tied to productivity, right? It's like society says, oh, you know what? If you're not productive, you're not considered a real man, right? If you're not able to produce something for a family or, for a job or make a lot of money or whatever, that can cause a stigma, right? And so from childhood, boys hear messages like man up, don't be soft. These messages don't disappear as we get older. We're hearing them all the time, or sometimes they're just the demons that we hear every day as we're going through the tasks of our lives. And they become walls, right? And behind these walls, men hide stress, we hide depression, we hide anxiety, trauma, loneliness. But here's the truth: silence does not make you strong. Silence makes you alone. And so I want to kind of talk about that. So, one of the reasons why it's important for us to address this is because there's a higher area or higher rate of suicide amongst men. I don't know if people knew that. Substance abuse, for coping. A lot of men use a lot of substance abuse or just different things to cope because it's so hard out here. We have anger sometimes, and it masks some of the sadness or fear or the fear of rejection that people are, or loneliness a lot of men are struggling with. Relationships break down due to unspoken emotions, right? And so a lot of times I've noticed, and again, I like to just keep myself in the situation. I've expressed myself to individuals, and depending on, I would say, the emotional acuity of that individual, it could be a challenge, right? And so when you're vulnerable and you're expressing yourself, you need somebody that you're expressing it to be what I would call emotionally intelligent in order to hear what you're saying, support you, with what you need, and be able to kind of help you work through that. And sometimes I would say in our community, that's a challenge, right? Because depending on how they grew up, it's like people get into this reactful type of situation where they just react or respond first rather than sit back. Sometimes we get defensive rather than just sit back and just kind of work through it, right? And I think that's important. And so for those of you people are interested, feel free to reach out, the Maassen Group 1@gmail.com. I can sit down with you. I can break down some different strategies that we can work through that. And sometimes you just need somebody to talk to and work through it. Okay. Oh, also too, when men don't talk, the pressure doesn't disappear a lot of times because when men and women communicate differently, right? I want to say I read something that I think the average man speaks like 2,500 words to a woman's 15,000 words, right? You know what I'm saying? So if you got 2,500 compared to 15,000, there's definitely going to be some mismatch in that communication, right? And so I know for me, growing up with two sisters and a mom, a lot of times it was like if I didn't have my strong stepdad there, man, I would have missed a lot of meals. I wouldn't have got words in edgewise because if we notice, women are made it. They move kind of quickly, and sometimes we might need some time to sit and process, and we might not be able to respond so quickly. And so with our 15 to 2,500 words, you already outnumbered because somebody coming at you with 15,000, right? And so with that could be overwhelming, right? And so you just kind of sit and you need more time to process. And so where do you have that space, or where do you have that type of experience where people could just feel you and support you with that, right? Really, really important. And so sometimes, like I said, it can disappear and leak out in other ways. With anger, men can get angry. They can withdraw in those situations, over drinking, overworking. People around us, partners, kids, coworkers, they feel the impact too, right? And raise your hand if life keeps lifing, right? I mean, we have situations where, we look at what's going on as far as our leadership right now. That can cause a lot of frustration. Right now, you guys probably heard about it. I heard that there was like this, they pulled back as far as funding, as far as the government. So like 250,000 people, all of a sudden their funds is on hit. They stopped it all. So I can imagine that's going to cause some stress, right? If your cheddar is not cheddaring, right? You know what I'm saying? If people are used to, making sure they take care of their families, and all of a sudden that halts, but then people have expectations for people to do certain things for their job, that can cause some extra stress, right? And I would say the onus is on us as men to make sure that we protect the family, that we support the family. It's a lot of expectations for us to be strong. And sometimes, that can be challenging if emotionally we haven't been supported, right? we have to nurture that within ourselves in order to be strong in terms of financially, spiritually, economically as well. So it's important for us to constantly feed ourselves with that. Okay. Silence isn't neutral, it's destructive. And so it's important that we have someone to reach out to talk to about that. If you're listening right now, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time I told someone how I'm really doing today, right? Or how I'm really feeling. No, I'm not good. No, I'm not fine, but the truth, right? So be honest with yourself. So if you're sitting on the couch, you're in the gym, you're working out, or you're just in your car, think about it. When's the last time you just told somebody, yo, how am I feeling? Like, or just check in with yourself and see what's up, right? If it's been a while, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're human, right? And I think, like I said earlier, life keeps life in. And so sometimes I think we kind of get on that hamster wheel of life. We're chugging along, and then 5 years go by, and we have kids, we have family, and then we have wife or divorce, or wife and divorce, or business and then failure or success. It's the roller coaster of life. And then you're taking care of your dad, funerals, situations, graduations, milestones in your life. I mean, it just keeps going. And so I think, and we have our own personal goals we're working towards. And I think sometimes when we're, as men, as we're working towards these particular goals and aspirations, sometimes we don't see the forest through the trees, right? And so it's important for us to kind of stop, take stock, and make sure we take care of our mental health. Okay. So today, I want you to start with one trusted person, right? Is there somebody that you can talk to? Make sure you can have that real conversation with that person, and that they are respecting your boundaries, they're supporting you, they're giving you the space, and they're kind of helping you see some things within yourself to become a better person. Okay. Use simple language. I've been stressed. I'm overwhelmed. I need support. I need to chat with you for a little bit. Let me just kick it with you, whatever. Normalize the check-ins, right? For those people that knew, I had came back from a funeral not too long ago. My aunt had passed away, and I had to go down to Michigan and Indianapolis. And there was some family members I hadn't seen since I was a little kid, right? And I'm 54. So I'm like, I had to ask myself, why is it that I only see people during funerals? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to ask yourself that, like, and so I had to step back and say, man, I could do better with this. Now, granted, parents had their challenges and they had their thing that they went through, but it's like, now that I'm an adult, I have the ability to make certain choices. So you got to ask yourself, okay, what am I doing to make sure I check in with friends and family? And I want to say this too, for my brothers that are listening. A lot of times the strongest person that you think is out there is the person that you need to check in the most. I want to say that. I know me personally, I'm a pretty strong person, right? And so it's cool just to check in and say, yo, what's up? Right. So I appreciate those people that do that. But if you know some people out there, and typically they're the type of people that are like, they always got it handled, make sure you check in with that person. I would say at least once a week. If that's too much of a challenge, at least twice a month, right? Set that on your schedule, set it on your phone, check in with that person. It's really, really important, because sometimes just checking in with that person could be the catalyst they need to let them know that they're cared for, right? That's really important. And I want to say that especially for my people out here that are taking care of their parents, because I think sometimes, when you're in that situation, the roles reverse, and it's a very daunting experience, right? It pushes you. You got to really tap into some things, but you got to really create some boundaries too, to make sure that you have enough mental bandwidth to take care of yourself too. So use therapy as a tool, right? Talk to someone like myself. It's not a last resort. Check in with friends regularly. Replace fix it mentality with feel it mentality. Practice expressing your feelings. I'm feeling this. Honor your feelings, right? Because if you don't honor your feelings, guess what? People aren't going to honor you. So it's important to honor your feelings. If people are saying, yo, I'm feeling this way, respect that. And honor your feelings too, right? I've noticed, for me, I've been working through that, because sometimes it's like, I'm in a place where I'm not, I would say I'm feeling a certain kind of way, but I don't have enough bandwidth to express that I'm feeling that way yet, right? Honor that, because sometimes feelings are kind of like a roller coaster. Like you can catch it up on the high, you can catch it on the low, and sometimes there's a neutral zone. And so honor all of it. I think that's important. Build emotional vocabulary, right? What I mean by that is, you know, be okay with expressing, you feel this way. And don't really go from the mind. I think that's really important as men, because I feel like a lot of times we try to logicalize things. Um, and so we have to kind of really feel it, right? And then when somebody communicates something to you, like, don't be so quick to be defensive, right? Just kind of take it in and say, okay, I appreciate you sharing that, right? And just sit with it. Because I think as you practice that, you get to kind of honor that person from their point of view, which is important, because as you're honoring that person, actually you're honoring yourself. And so it's important to create those boundaries, but actually work on that, right? Okay. And also too, like, when you want to break the silence, you don't require a dramatic type of confession. It doesn't have to be something serious. It could be something small. Just texting a friend, just before the show, I reached out to a friend and we're gonna, have lunch later on in the week, right? It's simple. Just, hey, what's up? Want to tap in with you, blah, blah, blah. Text, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. You converse with a partner. A moment of honesty with yourself, like keeping it a buck, I think that's important. I think it's also important to have somebody that's holding you accountable for keeping you honest with yourself. Because I would say we all have a blind spot of some things, and it could be based on like our upbringing, right? If we dealt with a lot of trauma, that trauma is like normal to us. And so how do we know what a healthy relationship looks like if we haven't experienced healthy relationships, right? And so we have to practice, feeding into those healthy relationships, right? And it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel, kind of weird. You got to push past boundaries. You have to be diligent, right? You have to be compassionate towards yourself. And so it's important to make sure that you practice that, right? Also, think about the community. Men need spaces that we can be vulnerable. It could be the barbershop. It could be clubs, community clubs. It could be gyms, face spaces, radio shows. You can tap in with me. Um, you know, we heal in community, where we feel as though individuals have that commonality. We can come together as one. We hear another man say, I know me personally, when I hear another man say, I've been struggling too, sometimes shifts, suddenly we're not the only one carrying the weight, right? And also, too, what I've noticed as I've been working with my clients and just the community, um, there's certain lessons I learned that I can help other people that's going through that challenge, right? And sometimes you just need a hug, just to just have someone stand beside you so that okay, if they got through that, then I can get through that. Or somebody can say, yo, that's just a part and parcel of life, right? And you're like, oh, really? Yeah, let me show you how they went through that. I remember talking to my uncle the other day. We were just kicking it. And I was just like, yo, bro, I was feeling overwhelmed. He was like, yeah, man, sometimes you just got to take a step back and just say, whew, you know what I'm saying? And so that's important, right? Because sometimes we have this stigma where we got to keep going, right? Even God, when he produced the earth, he rested on the seventh day. And sometimes we want to just keep working and working and working. We can work ourselves to an early grave. And so sometimes that overworking is a sense of I would say trauma that we're trying to avoid sitting back with ourselves and really dealing with the emotion, right? And so it's important to make sure we have balance, really, really key. Sometimes you have to just sit back and honor your feelings, right? Is it messy? Absolutely. It's messy, right? But is it necessary? Absolutely. It's very necessary. And so it's important to sometimes sit down with yourself and work through them. If you got to cry it out, it's okay. You might need to get some Kleenex, pillow, go out, scream, throw something, but maybe not at a person, right? Or a building, you know what I'm saying? But sometimes you got to do certain things to get it out your chest, to get it out your system, right? Walking is a really good thing. I've been doing research and they talk about those rebounders, jumping on those rebounders is supposed to be really, really good for your lymphatic system. But also, you just kind of jump to kind of deal with the stress and that type of thing. But also move the energy, right? I think that's important. And I think it's really, really important to make sure you try to find positive things that you could do to kind of work through that. Okay. All right, real quick. So if you take one thing from today's show, let it be this: your feelings are not broken, your struggles are not weaknesses. And your voice matters, right? So breaking the silence is an act of strength, and you deserve support, connection, and peace. And I'm curious to see if you guys can just chime in and let me know, did you think this was beneficial today? Do you think it was helpful? I'm hoping that, those individuals who need support can reach out, the Maassen Group 1 at gmail.com. I appreciate the comments, appreciate the support, appreciate all the love that I received since I've been here almost 2 years now. It's really cool. Also, too, just want to say real quick, make sure you guys go to the Call to Conscience Museum. It's going to open this past weekend. Make sure you guys check it out. It's really cool. The tours are currently happening on Thursdays and Fridays. So we got a couple days from 3 o'clock p.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So make sure you get your tickets at calltoconscience.world. Okay, make sure you guys check that out. Also, if you guys know, the host that comes in after me, make sure you guys show her some love. She switched it up. Dr. Tracy Harrell. Now it's AI for everyone living powerfully with AI. So make sure you guys check that out. You know what? I've been really checking out AI and trying to use it with a lot of stuff in my business. I've heard mixed signals about it. However, I would say I'm old enough to realize that, you either become part of the solution or you end up being less of the problem. And basically, I think about that, right? So it's important to be adaptable. I've noticed that in my life. There's certain things that existed when I was growing up that no longer exist. And so it's key to be adaptable. One thing that came to mind is I'm looking at this right here is a cell phone. Before cell phones, we had pagers, and we also had those phones that you would pay phones, right? For those people that don't know, the pay phone, basically you would throw 10 cents in there or 20 cents in there. I think it started at 10, it ended up being like 20 cents, maybe 25 cents. You put it in this payphone and you can call anybody from, wherever you work. So now we had a cell phone. And then we had the pagers, right? And I'm sharing this because I've learned as I've watched life evolve, that, you have to evolve with it. Otherwise you become obsolete. And when I was growing up, they had these little doors in the side of the house where the milkman used to deliver milk, right? And some of you guys are like, yo, milkman. Exactly. Exactly. So that's obsolete. And so what they ended up doing was sealing those little doors, because in Detroit, you got a little kid, man, he'll roll up in there and be all up in your spot, right? And so they had to seal them up because now obviously it doesn't exist, right? And so I'm sharing that because you have to kind of keep your mind nimble, keep it active. I want to say thank you very much for those people that shouted out. Thank you. I see the love and the hearts there. Thank you so much. Very appreciative. I want to say I appreciate you guys chiming in with us every week, showing us some love. And so just to kind of tap out before we tap out today, I just want to say, what can we do as men to mitigate the silence, right? I would say be honest, connect with somebody who'll see you for who you are, right? Make sure you tap in with somebody and be true to yourself, right? Really, really important, okay? All right, real quick, one more thing. Call to Conscience Museum, once again, before I wrap it up, it opened this past weekend. Tours are currently happening on Thursdays and Fridays from 3 to 7. Make sure you guys check it out. A lot of cool things. I've been walking around, some beautiful experiences. I think you guys will definitely get caught up. Saturday and Sunday, right? It's supposed to be really good weather. Your family, get out there, get caught up. 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And make sure you get your tickets at calltoconscience.world. A lot of cool, rich history here in Seattle. So you definitely want to jump on that and see what's going on with that. Okay. All right, cool, guys. I want to say thanks again for chiming in. If you know somebody, if you notice that, you have a loved one who maybe he or she or they have not been very, I would say, communicative, use this moment to reach out to them and just say, hey, what's up? I'm just checking in on you, right? You'd be surprised, right? Those individuals don't have a Valentine. We're also in the Black History Month. And so in lieu of Black History Month, maybe reach out to a African-American friend. Just say, yo, what's up? I'm just tapping in, just checking in with you, right? Life is too short. Sometimes we can take it for granted. And, you don't want to just spend time with people during their funeral, right? And so while we're here, we want to make sure that we celebrate them while they're here. And my mom used to always have this saying, it's just like, give people their flowers when they're alive. Really, really important, right? Because it doesn't really mean anything when they're laying down on their back and you're giving them flowers, right? And so it's important to give them flowers when they're alive. And so with that being said, I want to say thank you. I want to give you guys your flowers. I appreciate you guys chiming in for these several years. week after week. Appreciate that. Looking forward to tapping in with you guys next week. All right. And just want to say I'm very thankful. I'm very humbled by you guys tapping in. I see some people putting some comments in there. And also too, in order for you guys to make sure that you are handling your silence is make sure you connect with somebody who can help you through. Make sure you're honest with yourself. And I would also say, make sure you have fun, right? Life is too short, right? You got to enjoy life, right? Have fun, right? It's important to have that little kid play a little bit, right? Speaking of that, yesterday I went to the beach with my roommate. That was cool. Had a good time out there. I should have took the drone, but it was still fun. You know, I was playing in the fort. I have to find a picture and send it to you guys and see what you guys think about that. So, all right, guys, I want to say it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I'm going to roll out now. I want to say I'll see you guys next week. Without further ado, peace.